I'm looking forward to the interview, I must say.
Okay.
And you're all set?
Sure.
You're full now? You feel complete after having a sandwich and something to drink?
I feel complete.
All right. Let's start with your new album on Island Records, Julian. Saint Julian, which is going to be released in March. I heard an advance copy cassette of it, and I'm inclined to agree with some of the reviews in the British press. Musically, it's harder and brasher than any of your previous solo records. It almost energized direction.
I think that's got a lot to do with being away. You know, I spent a lot of time just hanging out and being domestic, worrying about contracts, not worrying about the way people perceive me. Actually, I had so much time off, I had a chance to forget the way people perceive me.
What do you mean, the way people perceived you?
Well, it got to the stage in Britain where it was very easy to say Julian Cope is off his head.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that really annoying, because as soon as the easiest way for people to put you down is to say you're crazy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because then they can just pigeonhole you.
Are you talking about the image that the press more or less labeled you with the Teardrop Explodes?
Yeah, and I think it's probably the best thing I did was to go away and get hungry again.
Now, did the image that you had created? Now, you created that yourself to a certain degree, did you not?
I guess I did. Yeah, but the way of the human being is that he's always going to get pissed off, even if he created it himself. You know, I feel a lot more tense than I used to. You know, I think that I got a little bit flabby in a few areas for a while. You know, my mind became a little bit more impaired, and I was doing things just because it was, I don't know, because it took less thought. And I started looking at all my contemporaries, and they seem to be getting blander and blander. And I thought, I don't want to be around during this period.
Well, what kind of what contemporaries are you referring to?
Well, groups that started off the same time as us, like, you know, Simple Minds and the Bunnymen, and
mm-hmm.
they just seem to be, and Wah, they seem to be getting a bit nice.
Okay, I see what you mean.
You know what I mean?
Now, did the drugs had a lot to do with that image in the beginning, right?
Yeah. I went too far with that. But then again, you know, there's no such thing as there.
I suppose, yeah. Okay, now, but the newly energized direction, that has been ventilated into the music. Like I said, it's harder than anything else you've ever done before. Now, did you intend to make that record harder than anything else that you've ever done?
Yeah.
Solo and Teardrop Explodes?
Yeah. See, what happened was the last couple of things had got a bit pastoral and depressing in their pastoralness. And in a way, the way that I write is my way of purging. It's, you write a song about how depressed you are, and
mm-hmm.
that depression starts to lift. It goes with the song. The whole album of Fried was very, very down. It was like, it's like a pastoral death trip or something. And by writing that out of my system, I came out into 1985, and I thought, I'm really going to take myself to pieces and look at myself. So I started to lose a lot of weight, started to eat well, started to exercise, started to get tense again, as opposed to flabby. And I've taken a long while, and I haven't messed around, and I've got a group that I trust. I'm no longer so paranoid. And I think the music now is, well, it's more snotty. There's a lot more. I guess there's more bravado in it, which is just, you know, it's the way of the Western male human being.
It sounds like you fell into somewhat of a Syd Barrett syndrome.
I guess maybe, yeah. And I always hated the idea of being like that. I hated the idea of being perceived as a real weirdo.
That burnout syndrome, was that the idea and the theme of the song that Bill Drummond recorded, Julian Cope is Dead?
Yeah, I think so. I think he might have meant brain dead.
Brain dead more than actually physically dead.
Huh?
How did you react to that song when you first heard it?
I thought it was very funny, because it was quite accurate, really. Bill kind of wrote me a letter, almost like an apologia, saying, this is what it's about. You know, don't take it to heart. I think that you're going to be okay. But I don't mind. You know, I've never really minded people disliking my music or disliking me, so long as they had some kind of positive or negative, as opposed to, you know, bland vision of me. I always think that with any kind of strong art, be it music or cinema or painting or whatever, the stuff that's great or the stuff that's rubbish, you've just got to have a very, very hard attitude towards it. It's very, very easy to like Picasso, but it's also very easy to detest him. And that's the way people always felt with me. Some people just thought I was the worst songwriter ever, and that didn't really bother me, so long as they didn't think that I was just nothing.
Now, here in Canada, we are more or less preceding the Saint Julian album with the World Shut Your Mouth EP, and on that, I was really delighted to see you recorded a superb version of Perubu's Non-Alignment Pact. What made you decide to record that song?
Well, when I went solo to start with, I did the World Shut Your Mouth tour about at the beginning of 1984, and we did Non-Alignment Pact, and I just love that song. It's just a great song. And I was recording last year, and originally Saint Julian was going to be a double album, and then I thought, well, hold on, this is completely the opposite of what I want to do. Why don't I do an EP first? And Non-Alignment Pact's the kind of song that people should know. It's like certain songs I couldn't presume to do because they're just too difficult. But people who are younger should be aware of Perubu.
I agree.
And a song like that is just brilliant. It's got like the most basic rock and roll tune in the world, and it's just got these far out kind of metaphysical love song lyrics, which I really love. They're really absurd. That's what I love about them.
All right, now the song World Shut Your Mouth, was that previously included on the World Shut Your Mouth album?
No, I wrote that song about a year and a half ago. It was heavily influenced by my lack of memory, basically. I was going through my old record collection, and I came to World Shut Your Mouth, my album, and I thought, wow, it's a great name for a song. And I thought, this dude, he'll never remember, so I'll just rip it off.
It sounds like you're lashing back in that song, a la the Rolling Stones, Get Off My Cloud.
Well, that's really the way that I feel, It's a lot of people say, oh, God, I don't like that song. It's just so snotty. It's like being snotty for the sake of it. But the way that I see rock and roll anthems is they shouldn't be like Onward Christian Soldiers. They should just be I don't know, frustrated. They should be angry. And when you're angry, it is like Get Off of My Cloud. It doesn't bear too much thought. It's like the veneer of frustration, the veneer of rebellion. World Shut Your Mouth is such a blanket put down. It's supposed to annoy people, but then again, it's the way that a lot of people feel. Is that when you're at your most frustrated, you want everybody to get out of your room, to get out of your life. I like things like that. It's cool. Writing a rock and roll anthem's cool, so long as the anthem's not appearing to say too much. It's just bitter for the sake of it.
All right, in the past, the British press was really never easy on you. They thrashed you at virtually every chance they got. Now they seem to be praising you. Now, why do you think they're so condescending at one point, and then the next time they'll turn around and reverse their attitudes?
I guess to a certain extent, they've forgotten. Like the English press are the same as any press. They only remember what they want to remember. Whenever they'd review an album of mine, they'd slag it off and say, why is this new album inferior? Why is it nothing like the last album, which was brilliant? And then I'd go back to the old review of that album that they were saying was brilliant, and they slag that one off as well. They like things in hindsight, and I think that my music is the kind of stuff that does take a little while to get into. You can't really have the album for 4 days and do a complete review. Also, it doesn't really bother me, People have always slagged me off personally for the way that I am and the way that I feel, because as a musician, I'm quite naked when it comes down to it. It's not really whether it's honest or dishonest. It's just that I'm very open, and I am aware of the absurdity, standing on a stage, being self-important. Sometimes you need to be able to say, listen to the audience, listen, what I'm saying could be great and it could be absolute garbage. You've got to make your mind up. And if you say that to people, a lot of the time they don't want that. They don't want to know that. They just want you to be like some kind of rock god. And I refuse to be that. I refuse to be perfect, because there's nothing perfect about me at all. I'm just the same. I say the same asinine things as everybody, and sometimes I just happen to perceive things better than a lot of people. You know, when I'm good, but I can be the worst, and I'm aware of it.
All right, you find yourself a lot more together these days. You're a little more domesticated, drug-free. Your music seems to be right on the mark this time around. How do you think your fans are going to react to this Julian Cope as compared to the Julian Cope that was sort of all over the road before?
I guess there's going to be the same people who love that music are going to get pissed off. I think some people really... I think some people want you to be a complete failure. It's like their way, you know, that way you belong to them.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes fans only want you to be unsuccessful. They want to be able to keep your records and know that none of their friends have them. It's very confusing to be that kind of artist because you sit there, you know, depressed all the time. It's like even when I was doing Fried, I still wanted to sell 10 million. You know, I kind of knew really that there's no chance of that. But I just want people to know, you know, that the only difference between now and then is that my confusion, I'm more comfortable about my confusion this time. I think the songs are confused. They're just confused in a more snotty way.
Tell me a little something about the Bandits that you're working with now.
Well, they're all younger than me. That's the main thing, because I'm 29, so I mean, to a certain extent. I didn't want anybody who was kind of flabby. I've got a 21-year-old guitarist called Donald, who is brilliant. I've stopped playing guitar because he's so good. I just play bits of acoustic and a bit of my 335. Chris Whitten, who used to be in the Waterboys, plays drums. He's been there for about 2 years. James Eller is playing bass. He's the only bass player that I'm not paranoid about because he doesn't overplay. Most bass players, they just want to play and play. And he also played on Wilder, the second Teardrops album.
Mm-hmm.
So I trust him. And I have Double De Harrison on keyboards, who's kind of a strange Texas character. Plays real simple keyboards, isn't hung up about not being amazing. And they just want to... They're very tense people, and I think I exist best around people who are tense.
You're regarded as somewhat of a protege to some of the newer bands in Great Britain these days. I'll give you one example, the Mighty Lemon Drops. Are you working with any of the new bands as a producer or consultant of any way?
No, I've been asked a lot. I'd be really worried. You know, those groups would be spoilt if I came along, because I'd want them to... I'd be like a Todd Rundgren. You know, whenever Todd Rundgren produced an album, it sounded like the new Todd Rundgren album. And I think I have to be very careful not to force my trip down people's throats. People need space, especially young groups. They really need space. And I know from the past, the people that I've worked with, sometimes they just used to stick their trip on me way before I trusted them. And I think that art just needs as much space in the first 2 years of its existence. And then you can start imposing restrictions.
It's funny you mentioned producers. Todd Rundgren recently produced the XTC album. You're not the first person who's mentioned Todd's influence and domineering personality in the studio. Now, you worked with Ed Stasium on Saint Julian, and Ed Stasium is, from my mind recollects, worked with the Ramones for a while, but you parted company with Ed Stasium. Why?
Well, what happened was I started off the album in this euphoria of, hey, let's make an amazing rock and roll album. The only difference is that I wanted it to be phenomenal, and Ed just wanted it to be great. And Ed's quite a lot older than me, so I figured we did World Shut Your Mouth, we did Space Hopper together, and I really wanted somebody who was going to push me more. So I started working with this guy, Warren, and Warren Livesey is 2 years younger than me. He's one of the most uptight people I've ever met. He's skinny and he's short and he's really cool. I really like him. And he tells me, he tells me what he thinks. And I think that a producer is somebody who motivates you. He's not somebody who says yes. He says yes under duress. And I like to argue. I like to fight. I like to really get in there, and you have to beat shit out of people sometimes. That's the way that I am. There's nothing hippie about the way that I work. If something isn't a tense situation, then I get really pissed off with it.
Are you really meticulous in the studio?
Yeah, and I really need to trust people. Sometimes I like to just, I just like to get under the mixing desk, and I like to lie there, and every so often I'll come out and say, that's a bunch of bullshit, or maybe that's brilliant, but sometimes I just stay there for hours and don't say anything. And working with Warren, he'd done the Fetus albums, he'd done the new Zuzza album, and he was used to people giving him a hard time. So he was cool when I gave him a hard time, because he gave me a hard time. And I think the more friction you get when you're working, the better it is sometimes. Saint Julian is very ironic as a title. Saint Julian it's kind of pompous, but it's pompous in a really absurd way. Saint Julian is, I like the idea of building myself up, because it's like building myself up is making it easier to knock me down. I'm a very destroyable character, a very breakable character. I want people to be aware of just how absurd heroes. And if you call yourself Saint Julian, a lot of people get really pissed off. And I think you have to annoy people. The idea of the whole album is saying, you can look brilliant, and you can write brilliant, and you can sing brilliant, and you can still be a major league arsehole. You can be all those things.
But don't you think with a song like Saint Julian, like you said yourself, some people are going to hate that title of the song? They're going to hate that aspect. Don't you think that the press is going to take one look at that title and think, my God, who the hell does he think he is?
Sure.
And
yeah.
they're gonna write the album off just by that one notion alone.
Sure, yeah. Well, that's the way that it's been all along. I'm not doing things so that people love me. I'm doing things so that people kind of get a little bit of a jolt. I'm not bothered about. I don't worry too much about people loving me. I just want them to have some kind of feeling.
Respect?
No, I don't even really want respect. I just want people to be aware of the fact that, the world is so glorious, such a fantastic place, and people get into this kind of bland living. If they can be annoyed or appalled by the album being called Saint Julian, a lot of the time they're going to make an effort to listen to it, just to see, what kind of dude calls his album Saint Julian.
Satisfy curiosity, so to speak.
Yeah, and the way Saint Julian is what I'm saying is that kind of deification of yourself is crazy. It's horrible, but a lot of people do it. And the only way that I could say how bad it is by doing it to myself. It's like I hate those. I hate the way people make themselves into heroes. And Saint Julian is meant to. It's like absurd. The very idea of me being a saint is just terrible.
Sort of a parody upon yourself.
It is, yeah. It's a real self-parody.
I especially like Eve's Volcano, all shot down in Trampoline, which is currently the second single in Great Britain, is it not?
Yeah.
I especially like Trampoline. It's sort of I perceived it as a love song.
Sure. It's a love song. In a way, it's my Maybelline. It's that kind of cycle of selfless love, where it's almost like, it's like a Christian love in a way. It's like I love this girl, but her name is Trampoline. My nickname for her is Trampoline, because she becomes this character that I adore, but she just walks all over me. And it doesn't matter. It's like when you love somebody so much. It's like Jesus Christ's love of the world was so big, it didn't matter that they nailed him to a cross and killed him, because he was going to love him in any case. And that's the way I feel sometimes. It's the way I feel about my wife. And my love for my wife is like the physical embodiment of the whole world. I really care about this place, and I'm really glad that I'm here. And I think a lot of people see it as such a burden being here, but it's like 70 years. You've got to come to terms with it, and it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it's the same with Eve's Volcano. I just had this image of the day the Mona Lisa was finished. You imagine Leonardo standing back and looking at the Mona Lisa and saying to his friends, "Hey, guys, it's finished. Come and have a look." And everybody sees the Mona Lisa as being this ancient piece of history, piece of art history. But once upon a time, it was brand new. And with Eve's volcano, I got that image in my head, almost like the Eve's volcano is like the first human orgasm. It's like, wow, what a fantastic feeling. When mankind just came and said, this is the way that it is. We are actually capable of feeling so brilliant. It's like mind-boggling. And the whole world is so mind-boggling. People need to be reminded every so often just how great it is.
Does it bother you when people say it's a comeback? Because so many artists hate that term comeback.
Yeah, I guess it is a comeback in as much as musically I've been away for a long while. It never feels like a comeback, obviously, because I've been here all the time as far as I'm concerned. I just happen to have been in a different area. I've been like living in a kind of a reclusive life. But yeah, it is a comeback, and I suppose however much I protest, that's the way it is.
Do you find yourself, again, I'm going back to what we were talking about earlier about being more domesticated, drug-free. The music is harsher and more brasher. It's a lot rockier than anything else you have, but do you find yourself in some ways being a little bit more mellow, as in a person?
No.
As you were when you were with the Teardrop Explodes and in the height of the drug craze and whatnot?
No, I find that it's gone the other way, really. It's far more of a rush now. I've been doing interviews, and a few people have walked in and said, "Hey, you must really hate being in this recording company studio. You must hate being surrounded by record company people." And I say, "No, you can't imagine how nice it is." I got to the stage where I was just scared to go out, and it's great being normal. It's great being together. I'm really into it because it's great not. That kind of confusion is the most bewildering thing. I used to find it so scary to do things, and I don't anymore. I like hanging out with people, and I like talking to them, and then they say to me, "Hey, you're really together. You're not off your head at all." Being off your head is the most scary thing in the world. I used to question so many things, and I feel great.
Your opinions and attitudes, I have to draw a comparison, if you don't mind. But your opinions and attitudes right now are so positive. It's very reflective of the current state that Iggy Pop is in. He found himself being sucked into the hells of rock and roll, so to speak, and has bounced back with a more positive outlook on everything else.
I guess so, yeah. Well, it's very easy for people to forget, but it was a very hip thing to do when I was around before. People would arrive and they'd say, "Hey, we have something for you," and everybody wants to turn on with you.
Mm-hmm.
So they turn on once, and you end up turning on 6 times that day. So you end up just grubbing around in the dirt. Every night you get in bed and you think, "Shit, all these people have had one great experience, and I'm just off my head." It's very hard to live like that. People think they're doing you such a big favor, by turning up and saying, "Hey, we have something for you," and it's terrifying after a while.
You find yourself staying away from those people?
Well, yeah, I just back off because it's not like I stay away from them, but I just actually try and explain to them, you've got to realize what those things did to me that time around. I like living in the real world. I don't want to be a weirdo. It's very scary. It's very terrifying. People seem to think that it's really groovy living in this kind of twilight zone, but it's not.
In the November issue of Melody Maker, you cited the new Iggy Pop album as being the very quintessence of the mediocrity that you wanted to avoid. Can you elaborate that a bit?
Well, I guess with somebody like Iggy, he's been around for years. It doesn't matter. I don't like that album, but I'm really pleased that it's doing well. The guy's old. He's like 40. I'm 29. It's 11 years difference. I think I caught myself maybe a little earlier than he did. I don't like that album, but it doesn't bother me because he's given me so much pleasure over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Who cares? At least he's alive and he's having a good time.
Very good. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
I'm going to cap things off with a question not to do with music. Tell me about your toy collection, or to be specific, your dinky toy collection. It's really quite extensive, isn't it?
Yeah, I've got like about 1,000 toy cars.
That's amazing.
It's brilliant. They look so brilliant because I collect American cars, and they're just amazing cars. Especially because I collect the period from like 1942 to about 1970.
How lucrative is that hobby?
Well, I started collecting at a really good time. I mean, if you're gonna start collecting now, it'd be a hellishly expensive thing to do. But I started about 8 years ago, so everything that I bought 8 years ago is worth about probably between 10 and 20 times as much. But I have models of everything. You know, I have 52 models of 1956 Ford Thunderbirds because I collect those.
Wow.
And I collect Corvettes. I collect Corvettes from 53 right up to the present day, and I have about 170 models of Corvettes.
Have you ever thought about writing a song about that?
About my toys? No, that's kind of a side that I just...
you don't want to share with anybody else?
That's me. That's for me.
Yeah, I found that really interesting when I learned of the fact that you're a toy collector, because my relatives are from Great Britain, and they used to send me dinky toys all the time.
Really?
Oh yeah, and unfortunately I don't have them now because my brother went and sold them all.
Oh.
But they'd been sending me dinky toys from about 1960 up until about 1970. For 10 years, you know, they just keep sending me dinky toys, and I can remember when I was about 10 years old having a collection of, you know, well over 100 dinky toys. To me, that was a lot.
Oh, it was. Well, I mean, I think more than 10 is a lot, really. You know, because they're just so beautiful. I've all these. Dinky did so many models of the late 50s American cars. You know, things like General Motors in the late 50s. The fins were just brilliant. It's so far out, and the packaging is so cute. I've got all the boxes as well.
I was reading the New Music Express from January of this year, and they sort of capped off the article about how one of your colleagues bought a 55 Buick Roadmaster dinky.
Yeah, that is a brilliant model. That's one of the rarest. I've got one of those in yellow with a green roof. They're just amazing looking. I love Buicks.
I really think it's commendable that you're willing to talk about the dinky toy collection, even though it's a far cry from rock and roll, because so many artists have these hobbies, but they don't like to elaborate on them because so many people think that, or so many of these artists think, you know, well, I wonder what they're going to think of me now as a musician if they think that I'm collecting dinky toys.
Well, it's cool, you know. I mean, you're a human being, you know, and it's like, especially you knowing what dinky toys are.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm sure that you can appreciate them in the same way. You know, I just love looking at them. I like to collect them when they're perfect, and I love to collect them when they're battered. You know, it's like they're toys, so they have to be played with. But, well, I think miniatures of anything can be really beautiful.
Well, I'll dig around the basement and see if I can come up with any of the old dinky toys that I have.
You should start looking and try to recollect some of your childhood.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. I thought that I might just dig some up, maybe send you off one. Maybe you don't have one of them.
To me, you get into them yourself. You know, that's very kind, but I think you should get into them yourself. You know, you'd really start appreciating your childhood again.
You have an extensive record collection as well, do you not?
I guess so, yeah. I am...
What period of music are you most involved in?
Probably mid-60s.
Mid-60s?
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting, because you're 29 years old, and I'm 29 myself, and I found myself more involved in the rock that came out in the early 1970s, 1970 to 1974 especially.
Yeah?
I found myself really heavily involved in that music, and in particular, being probably the odd man out with my gang, so to speak. I found myself getting into artists and musicians who nobody else could get into, i.e. the New York Dolls, David Bowie, Iggy Pop, Mott the Hoople, a lot of the British bands from that era, but even branching further off into the art rock genre too. I found myself getting into that.
Yeah.
What is so special about the 60s to you?
I guess because it was so naive. I just loved that period just before the hippie arrived. You know, when everybody was like whirling around in this kind of chaos. You know, like the Stones riffs. That everybody was just ripping off Stones riffs and turning them into their own songs.